and a very warm welcome to Fair Point, where our focus is firmly on women. Their experiences, extraordinary women, ordinary women, workers in and out of the home, equality and inequality. We'll be raising the curtain on the issues that really matter. This week, we're zooming in on new mothers. The UK has some pretty generous maternity rights, a year's leave and fairly good pay conditions compared to some other countries. And companies have to guarantee new mothers their old job or equivalent when they get back. That's the letter of the law, but what of the spirit? Figures from the Equality and Human Rights Commission suggest the reality of life for many working mothers is at serious odds. Around 1 in 9 said they'd been forced out of work after having a baby. Well, later in the programme, we'll be talking to Jolie Brearley, founder of the website Pregnant Then Screwed. It collects testimony of discrimination from new mothers. Lawyer Jahad Rahman is also here, and Tina Knight, chairperson of Women into Business, who's sceptical about the whole phenomenon of maternity discrimination. First, though, I went to the Sussex coast to meet Hannah, who says she was fired because she had a baby. Watch this. So we're making this drive down to Brighton to meet Hannah, who feels that she was discriminated against following the birth of her child. It's a 2-hour drive that we've done, which is a commute from here to London that Hannah used to make every day when she was still working. And that in itself shows how committed she was to her job, that she was prepared to make that journey.
I was working at the best agencies in London on really big accounts and I was winning awards for my work. I didn't make any choices based on a fear or perception that I'd be treated any differently as a woman. I just thought that after you had a baby, you went back to work and you carried on as normal, which is what I did.
Little did Hannah realise that having a baby would close the door on her high-flying London career in advertising. Hannah worked right through her pregnancy with no time off despite horrible morning sickness. She even says she missed doctor's appointments if they clashed with meetings. And when her baby was just 4 months old, she returned to work.
One of my bosses had said to me that I could work one day from home when I came back. But on my first day back, he pulled me aside and said that was no longer possible and to be careful because perception was everything.
At first, Hannah didn't understand that comment. At Christmas, the agency closed as usual for 2 weeks, and when it reopened, everything had changed.
My bosses stopped giving me work. I didn't know why. I asked for work, but I wasn't given anything to work on. And projects that I would normally have worked on were given to an intern. My art director would say to me, I can't put this work through because it's not good enough. And I was behind the scenes, I was redoing some of his work.
Then 6 weeks later, the blow came.
My boss came up to my desk and said, "Can I talk to you?" And took me to a room. And as we were going into the room, he said, "Prepare yourself, this is going to be nasty."
Sadly, because of you.
There were my 2 bosses, my 2 male bosses, and the HR director of the company who didn't know me at all. And I sat down and they said, "You have 24 hours to leave. We're not happy with you." Literally came out of nowhere. I had no notion this was coming whatsoever. No idea they were even vaguely unhappy with me. And one of my bosses said to me, when I said, "I don't understand what's going on," and he said, "You're shit. You've always been shit. You know that." My other boss turned to the HR director, who didn't know me, who would have presumed this was true, and said, "We've warned her so many times about her performance."
Hannah says she went from faultless appraisals and spot bonuses to out on her ear in a matter of weeks. She had 24 hours to leave her job. Her boss's comment about perception being everything suddenly made awful sense.
I know in my heart it was not about my performance at work. I think it was about the fact that I left at 5:30 every day and the perception generally amongst the agency, and I think they wanted to cut costs and I was a really easy target.
Why were you such an easy target?
Because I was a mum.
Hannah's story would be barely believable if it wasn't one of so very many. A recent study by the Equality and Human Rights Commission found that 54,000 new mothers across Britain are losing their jobs every year. Of the 3,000 women surveyed, 1 in 9 said they'd been dismissed, made compulsorily redundant, or treated so poorly they had to quit. It's more common now than it was a decade ago.
They told me I was getting promoted. Then I got pregnant and they hired someone else for that role. Now I'm pregnant and stuck in a job where I've lost all trust and respect.
When I fell pregnant, my relationship with my boss deteriorated rapidly. She began to find fault in all my work, bullied me about my baby brain, which she said rendered me useless.
I was told by my older male director, well, just remember you'll be a mum when you get back. All you will want to do is come in, do the minimum and get back to your baby.
A common theme as I've been talking to women about this issue is that after having children, they don't feel that they've lost any of their professionalism, any of their ambition or drive, or importantly, any of their skills. But the fact is that often the perception of them in the workplace has changed. All of a sudden, they're on the mummy track.
To combat that, Hannah and her friend Carrie have set up a website, the Talented Ladies Club. It caters to women like them, professionals who just happen to be mothers.
Do you feel that you're more a mother than a career woman now?
No, it's just become different. And most of my clients are actually family businesses, and they, without oversharing with them, if there are issues with family, I'll say, I can't be on this conference call right now, but I can work later on in the day. They get other benefits from me working flexibly, which means I could work in the evening or I can work over the weekend, whereas if they were employing an agency, they couldn't do that.
For Carrie and Hannah, it also means they're at home to pick up their children from school, on hand to help with their homework and deal with life's everyday dramas. Now Hannah's children are growing up, but she says she still feels as angry today as she did the day she was fired.
Because of what happened to me and the way it was handled, to this day I have no idea. I can guess, but I have no concrete idea why they did that to me.
Hannah Martin there talking about her experience of discrimination in the workplace. Well, after the break, we'll be getting deeper into it and hearing the alternative view from our panel here in the studio. Stay with us. Welcome back. We're going to be talking about the issue of maternity discrimination now with a range of people. Tina Knight is chair of Women in Business, and she disputes the findings of the recent study that you saw in my report there. Also in the studio with me is Jolie Brearley, founder of Pregnant Then Screwed, whose website featured in that report, and Jahad Rahman, a discrimination lawyer who specialises in maternity cases. Jahad, I want to come to you first. Hannah, who we featured in our report, sought legal advice, but she was advised that she probably wouldn't get anywhere. On the evidence that you have, would you have given her the same advice?
I probably would have taken her case on. We are regularly contacted by a number of high-flying women in the city that have suffered detrimental treatment because of pregnancy and or maternity. And in fact, at the moment, I have about 3 live cases, and other colleagues have other cases. As a firm, we've probably got about 10 discrimination cases that we're dealing with, maternity and pregnancy discrimination cases that we're dealing with at the moment. We've noticed an alarming increase in the number of instructions that we get over the last 12 months. And
what do you put that down to, this increase?
The increase, I think it's a number of things. First of all, the lack of training within organisations. I mean, I act for employers and employees, so we see it from both sides of the fence. I think managers could do with training at large organisations, because sometimes it's not the directors at top, it's the sort of managers at a lower level that may not have had training on equality or diversity, and just a negative perception, just making assumptions that women that are off may not want to come back, or they may not be committed to their career once they return.
And what about small to medium-sized enterprises? Because, of course, Tina Knight herself is the owner of a small business, or a small to medium-sized business. Are you seeing a lot from that sector? I mean, it seems to me that it costs businesses money often to keep mothers on, possibly after they have had children. What can you say about that?
I think just in terms of the cost, I think that's a misconception. My personal view is that if you encourage diversity, then as a business, you could help you prosper. And I think the difference in a large and a small business is that in a large business, you may have more women sitting on the board, and therefore that encourages and inspires other women to return to work. I mean, we've not had many inquiries from smaller businesses, women that are employed by smaller businesses.
Have you ever run your own business?
I'm a partner in a business, yes.
As a solicitor?
Yes.
Yes. But have you ever actually been at the coalface with your own money invested and employing people?
We employ solicitors.
Why are you asking?
Yeah, I'm a director and a shareholder of the business.
Because when you're in the situation, so the first thing he said, I would have taken that case on. I don't think you would have taken that case on because there was an HR director sitting there. According to the way that lady said that she was dismissed, there was no written notices given, there was no verbal, no written thing. I wish I could get rid of people that easily. There is a set formula, and obviously the reason that a solicitor wouldn't take it on, because I don't think that was the true story, because a company at that large with an HR director would not sit there and hear directors just say you've got 24 hours to get out without having gone through the normal form process, because they know, sure as eggs is little eggs, there'll be solicitors like you ready to grab that case and go for it.
It's not about grabbing the case.
No,
I mean, we have a number of instructions, and there is reported cases on similar cases where individuals are called into a boardroom and are told, sorry, it's not working out, your performance is an issue, here's a settlement agreement, can you sign this? Go and see a solicitor, you've got 7 days to sign, waive all your rights to bring a claim, and we'll give you some money to go.
I think these are the exceptions to the rule, because it's very, very rare.
What the appeal courts have, there's a similar case like this against BNP Paribas, the investment bank, and in that case, a lady returned from maternity leave, she was called into a meeting, performance concerns were raised, and what the employers used was the word without prejudice, which basically means off the record. And she was then told to sign a settlement agreement and leave, just very similar to the story.
And she can't then use it to go to tribunal?
Well, what the court found, the Employment Appeal Tribunal found in that case, was that despite the use of the word without prejudice, the lady was able, she could make reference to those discussions, because if the underlying motive was discrimination, the without prejudice rule falls away. So if you say to someone without prejudice, I don't like you because you're a woman, or I don't like you because you're pregnant and I want to sack you, then you could refer to that in the tribunal proceedings. Normally a cloak would be a veil over those discussions. However, in that case, and it's good law still, the Employment Appeal Tribunal held that those discussions could be submitted in evidence.
Jolie, you've spoken to lots of women who feel that they have been in this situation. Is there law in place? Are they able to go to tribunal? Do they feel that a judge will find in their favour?
Well, there was a OnePoll research study conducted in 2013 that estimated 3% of cases go through legal proceedings, 3% of discrimination cases, which 3% is a tiny, tiny amount. And there are many structures and systems that prevent you from accessing justice when this happens to you. Firstly, certainly in my case and many of the other women's cases, I was pregnant when it happened to me, and I started legal proceedings and then was told I was having a high-risk pregnancy, and stress could mean that I would go into labour prematurely. So I stopped proceedings for the sake of the health of my baby and my health, and that's very common. But also when you've just had a baby, if it happens to you when you've just had a baby, you're exhausted. You know, you really don't know what you're doing. It's a completely new experience. So masterminding an employment tribunal at that point just feels nigh on impossible. So
and there is a time limit, isn't there? You've got to do it in 3 months, right?
3 months less 1 day you have from the point that discrimination occurs, and that just isn't long enough. And it meant for me that I couldn't access justice because I had to put my baby first. So that's one of the problems. There's also now tribunal fees, which are £1,200 to take a case, and when you're on maternity, who has £1,200?
Although the government's now talking about looking into that at least, do you think that that will be a factor in improving the situation?
Absolutely. I think the statistics show that the cases have reduced by 79% since tribunal fees have come into play. So that's since 2013. So it was 3% in 2013. You know, I dread to think what it is now.
But don't you not think that the reason the government put that in, because there were so many people jumping on the bandwagon and they were irresponsible, and the actual cases found against employers were so minimal compared to the numbers of women immediately saying discrimination, because everybody, the minute somebody said pregnant, insurance companies wouldn't take anything on, lots of solicitors didn't want to take it on, but the actual times that it was found in the favour, and there is discrimination, obviously this is discrimination whether you're disabled, whether you're black, whether you're gay, there's always discrimination in life, one accepts that. But the numbers of cases were totally irresponsible and unjustified claims were enormous, and it was felt that if somebody had to pay, they had to really have a case, and it would make them think twice rather than just jumping on the bandwagon. I agree £1,000 may be a lot, but I still think there should be some financial commitment, because if you've really been discriminated against, you will find the money.
It's interesting you say that, because you said earlier that a lot of your clients at the moment were coming from investment banks, so that the upper echelons of earning power. Have the fees made a lot of difference in the kind of cases you're seeing?
I think if you look at the statistics, they've shown a significant decline in the number of claims that have been issued in the Employment Tribunal. The last MOJ statistics have revealed that. However, I think the level of clients that we generally deal with, it's not really an issue for them, and it's just about education as well, because
they're the big buck earners, aren't they? That's why they're going for it, because their payoff will be substantial. It's worth their while because they are the big bucks earners. I mean, you made a very interesting point. You said that one of the clients was dealing with large corporate clients, and after she came back after maternity leave, she was not dealing with corporate clients. Do you honestly think a company can afford to have a large corporation without somebody looking after them for 6 months? Do you think they've got to bring in somebody else? And the difference there, the client then chooses. If they've been getting on with that investment advisor during that 6 months, you can't then say you've got to go back to the other one. If they say, hold on, we like this one, business is about making a profit. Making a profit gets taxed. That's what makes the world go round. People did not go into business to start to become a mini social service.
I know, we fully understand. I think if I could start off with the Equality Act 2010, that clearly states, Section 18 clearly states that a woman must not be treated unfavourably because of pregnancy or maternity. And then you have the maternity and parental leave regulations. And that states that if a woman returns to work within the ordinary maternity leave period, which is 26 weeks, then she's entitled, she has the right to the same job. Unless it's reasonably practical. So in this case,
Tina, are those laws difficult for small to medium-sized businesses?
They're impossible. If you've got a small company, say with 5 key players, and I'm not being discriminatory against invoice type, but if it's an invoice typist, we're not talking about that, because yes, you can get a temporary invoice type of thing. But if you've got a sales manager, a purchasing manager, a technical manager, these are trained jobs. You cannot pull them in ad hoc. So this is a major problem for small companies.
Julie, I have to interrupt you there. Do you agree, or can you see that there are disadvantages for small to medium-sized businesses in the situation that Tina's talking about?
I think it's really healthy that we're having this debate, that we're talking about the problems that small to medium-sized businesses endure when a woman has a baby. But I disagree that for the majority of businesses it's a real hardship in terms of the finances. The government pays the money of the woman that goes on maternity leave, so financially...
It's not a question of the payment, it's a question of the actual body in your company that you need that's trained.
So financially there is no huge impact on the organisation. In terms of skills, I work for a small medium-sized business, and when I had my last baby, somebody came in and covered my maternity leave, and he was so good they kept him, and they had an opportunity to trial him for 7 months, and he was so good they wanted to keep him on, and I got my job back, but they deployed him in a different department. So that was really healthy for them in terms of trialling somebody and growing. So there are positives as well as negatives.
And what about the same situation where somebody comes in and works for 6 months and they're better than you? And you're going to tell a company that this person is better, their productivity has increased your profit, but you've got to get rid of them now and bring somebody back who's possibly not as good and doesn't bring...
If they're that good and they're bringing in resources and driving money into the organisation, then surely they can find a way to deploy them in a different part of the organisation.
Well, in La La Land that might work, but in reality it doesn't.
It's not just about business and money though, is it? It's about the next generation, right? We have to keep procreating, that's our reason for being.
my argument is the government has got to accept that there's one size does not fit all, and they've got to look, as in America has similar laws, but not until the company is employing 250 people. Now, I don't say it's got to get that large, because we would call that large in this country, but they've got to look at companies that are employing, say, 25 people and less, and say these do not apply. And what you have to realise, that the Economic Institute and the IOD have said 75% of business in the country are SMEs. They're the job creators, they're the wealth creators, they're also flexible. There has to be flexibility. If it was for 25 and less, what happens, that company then can grow, and then it becomes a larger company, and then they can take on, because there's the financial resources and there's the personnel to cover that break.
Let's look at what some of the things that the government's doing. There happens to be a debate on at the House of Commons this afternoon. We tried to get in touch with Nikki Morgan. She sent us a statement which she attributed to a government spokesperson. I'm just going to read it to you. To help ensure that all women can fulfil their full potential, we've extended the right to request flexible working to all employees, introduced shared parental leave and expanded free childcare. We've made good progress. There are more women at work than ever before, and the gender pay gap is at its lowest rate on record. Jolie, extending the right to request flexible working to all employees, plus this shared parental leave, do you welcome changes like that?
Absolutely. Both of them are really, really healthy. You have the right to request flexible working. You don't have the right to flexible working. And I don't think there's enough information out there about the benefits of flexible working to businesses and employees. So I think that's something that we need to address. In terms of shared parental leave, fantastic step in the right direction, but for me it doesn't go far enough. I think when you've got a gender pay gap of 19%, which is huge, when you go on maternity leave, when you have a baby and you're at the most poor you've ever been, the father isn't then going to take the time off, because they're usually the main breadwinner. So the mother, nearly always going to get the mother who's going to take that time off. I would like to see a system implemented like the Nordic countries, where you have what's affectionately termed as a daddy quota, and it's around 3 months where they get paid leave for fathers, and that's really healthy for families, and it means that discrimination doesn't really exist, because a father is as much risk as a mother is in terms of employment, and so you have equal parenting, you have a happier, healthier child, and everybody is participating in the process equally.
Ajahid, I want to ask you, you say that companies come to you for advice as well. What kinds of advice are they coming to you for? Do you feel that companies are wanting to adhere to the spirit of the law, or are they coming to you rather to say, how do I walk just on the right side of the law without, you know?
We get both types of inquiries. I think, first and foremost, our corporate clients are generally treat their employees very well and are fair, and most of the requests relate to when a lady wants to come back, she may request flexible working, and you touched on that earlier, and she may want to come back part-time and has put in an application for 3 days, and it's how does the business accommodate that? And so we advise on the process to follow, and perhaps the business's needs can't accommodate 3 days, but 4 days might be appropriate. And what you need to look at as well is if you...
But yet again, you're saying large company. You're not dealing with the wealth creators and the job creators in this SME sector.
How do you think, Jolie, that companies can stick on the right side of the law but carry on making money, which is obviously so important, and deal with this flexible working request? Because it can't be it can't be easy for a small company.
I think it has benefits that they're not talking about. So if you have a mother or a father that can be more active in their child's life, they're a happier employee, and that has benefits for the business. But I also think for parents, childcare is quite restrictive. You know, I take my son, have to be there at 8 a.m, I have to pick him up at 6 p.m, and he's in nursery. At school, it's even trickier. So if I was, and I am able to drop him off, pick him up, and then I'm able to work later in the evening and finish off the work that I was doing previously. And so that helps me. It means I can pick up my son. I'm a happier employee. I'm getting my work done, and everybody wins. Whereas some companies say, you know, no, it's got to be 9 to 5. You've got to be working 5 days a week. So they're restricting the sorts of employees that they can attract to their organisation. And as we've said before, a diverse workforce is a healthy workforce. So if you have systems that support working mothers, then you're more likely to attract really good working mothers into your organisation.
And what about if it's a small business, because that's my expertise, so I can't have, you know, I've worked in large corporates and that's why I'm in a small SME, because I don't like it. But if their office is open from 9 to 5 and you say, well, I'd like to be off for 3 hours in the afternoon, but I can come in and I'll work till midnight, you can't run an office, you can't heat an office, you can't light an office, you can't have the office open for 1 or 2 employees. So it has to be, if your main business is in the American market or the European market, there are time spots. You know, flexible can only be flexible providing you've got to say a 10 to 12 slot and a 2 to 4 slot where everybody must be there, because they're your main production. You can be flexible to an extent, and smaller business are more flexible. I mean, I was very flexible with my PA to enable her, but there's give and take, and she was prepared to put herself out during her pregnancy by coming in for staff meetings, so she kept up to date, by being able to phone her if we had a problem, go through it. So therefore it worked, and she worked with us and we worked with her.
Okay, so give and take is the key. Flexibility from everybody.
Flexibility is the whole answer to this, and that's why government have got to. They're there to protect people, not to dictate how companies are run. That's where they're going wrong, and they don't know how to run a business anyway. Look at the government.
Listen, we're going to have to cut it short there, but I want to ask each of you very briefly just to say what needs to change. Jolie, you first.
Well, I think flexible working is key, as we've all said. I also think we need to give fathers an opportunity to play a greater role in their family life, and I think if we do that, that will solve a lot of the underlying issues that exist. We need to extend the 3-month time limit so that women actually can access justice, and yeah, those are the 3 key points I think we need to look at.
Okay, and Tina, briefly?
Basically, they've got to eliminate these rules completely for companies employing less than 25 people. The large corporates who they listen to and know absolutely nothing about the mainstream is stop giving them gongs for everything and actually tell them to open up creches, because the reason the Nordic system works, because the big companies have creches which enable the parents to take their children, so there's not such an emotional stress, and they're helping, because the cost of childcare is ridiculous. So they've got to look at that. Flexible childcare.
Great. And Jahad, what do you say?
First of all, I think what the government should do, I agree with the point about small, to differentiate between large and small businesses, but with big businesses, what they could look at is the right to flexible working. The duty on the employer is purely to consider the request, but not to grant the request. So with larger companies that have resources, have an infrastructure in place, what they could do is have a trial period, so they must, or they shall, as opposed to just consider the request and impose that. And secondly, I think the shared parental leave is a step in the right direction, and only time will tell if fathers start sharing the rights.
You know that.
It's just introduced in April, so I think we need to give it 2 years before.
Yeah, or even a generation, maybe, so that fathers get used to the idea that they can do this, and companies get used to it too. All right, thank you. Jolie, you want to add one more thing?
You need a strong stance from the government for society to follow. As Tina has said, fathers, you know, it's still in society, fathers don't necessarily want, in some cases, to take up their more fatherly duties, and they feel that it's not manly, and that definitely does exist. I don't think it exists everywhere, but it definitely does exist. And in order to change the way the perceptions of family and the perceptions of the roles of the mother and the father, government needs to make a really strong stance, and society will follow after that.
Okay, thanks so much for coming in, everyone, today. That's it for this edition of Fair Point. There are loads of ways of finding out more about the issues that we've been talking about today. Jolie's website, Pregnant Then Screwed, is a great place to start. And take a look at #WorksForMe, the Equality and Human Rights Commission's Twitter campaign. Join us next time for more.